This exact place where I am right now, standing in the rain in what is now Istanbul, was once the center of one of the greatest empires in human history, the Empire of Two Worlds, shaped by the Roman emperor who finally accepted Christianity. But long before that, it is said to have received a visit from an important apostle of Jesus.
The history of human civilization has already changed more than once here in Istanbul.
It was once Byzantium and then became New Rome, renamed to Constantinople after Emperor Constantine brought the capital of the Roman Empire here. It is known as the City of Seven Hills and Byzantine churches, many of which have been turned into ruins, and in modern times for its marvelous mosques. Well, Istanbul is also the city of cats. They are everywhere. It all started with a small Greek colony, which was called Byzantium, but Byzantium was located exactly at the meeting point of what we now know as the Middle East. And Europe was already a very important place with a lot of merchants passing through, and it ended up growing. That's why, shortly after the crucifixion of Jesus, according to local Christian tradition, the Apostle Andrew, the brother of St. Peter, came here wanting to preach the message of Jesus Christ. Wanting to open new assemblies, he would also end up, according to this tradition, starting what later became known as the Patriarchate of the Christian Church of the East. And, as I mentioned in another episode, it was Emperor Constantine who decided to bring the capital of the Roman Empire here, making it the Byzantine Empire, and turning Byzantium into what he himself liked to call New Rome. In the year 312, shortly before facing his enemy Maxentius, Emperor Constantine is said to have had a vision or a dream. A burning cross where it read, "In hoc signo vinces." Under this symbol you will conquer. The symbol was the letters Chi and Rho, the initials of the word Christ in Greek. Constantinos is said to have ordered this symbol, representing the Chi Rho, to be placed on all the banners, shields, and helmets of his soldiers. And they say that it was because of this that he defeated Maxentius at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, a bridge that, by the way, still exists today, 3 kilometers from the center of Rome. That's how Constantinos managed to unify the Roman Empire. But the reality is that Constantinos had already been noticing the strength of Christianity emerging from the catacombs. And from the assemblies, which often took place in private gatherings, in people's homes, it became increasingly necessary for him to accept Christianity so he wouldn't lose power, and on the contrary, to become the most popular emperor. Now there's a big question. Was Constantinos Christian? The information we have from official documents is that he was still a devotee of the pagan god Sol Invictus. The one who was a devout and fervent Christian was his mother, later known as Saint Helena. In the year 313, the emperor signed the Edict of Milan, a kind of law that ended religious persecution and granted freedom of worship to all the inhabitants of the empire. In addition, the edict returned to the Christians the properties that had been confiscated by the state. That's when Christianity left the catacombs and started becoming a major cultural and religious force in the Roman Empire. And it's very interesting to think that this is how history began to change. Even if the tradition isn't correct and the Apostle Andrei never came to preach here in Byzantium, we don't have any documentary or archaeological evidence of that. But anyway, what we do know is that disciples of Jesus' disciples came here and preached Christianity in this region. And 300 years later, when Constantine I opened the empire to Christian worship, allowed religious worship in the empire, and then moved the capital to this place here, the strength of Christianity was already very great in Byzantium, from then on called New Rome. The foundations were all set for a new Christian patriarchate to emerge here, almost on equal footing with the Vatican, one of the most important in the world. Constantine died shortly after changing the name of the city from Byzantium to New Rome, but the people only called that place Constantinople, and so it had to be renamed. Traces of the Roman Empire, later the Byzantine Empire, remain in this city today. This monument behind me, for example, is the obelisk of Theodosius. It was brought here in the year 390 and is still known today as the Egyptian obelisk. It was placed at the exact center of the Hippodrome of Constantinople. Well, today there's no more hippodrome, it's just this square, but it's another great mark of the Roman Empire in present-day Istanbul. We can see the base is from a later period. It's an addition to this wonderful Egyptian monument, which has over 3,000 years of history and was brought here from Egypt. This is really theft, but it's always happened in history. From here we can get a good idea of what the Hippodrome of Constantinople was like. It was all of this here, all the way to the end, passing by the obelisk that's right there in the middle. This is where city residents came to watch. One of the favorite sports of that time, chariot races. Remember the movie Ben-Hur? There's an incredible, exciting competition scene. That's right, all of this happened here, exactly in this place, at the time when Constantine was emperor, and even after him. Both the obelisk brought by Emperor Theodosius from Egypt in the 4th century and this other one here, Constantine's obelisk, stood right in the center of the Hippodrome. This monument is still very well known here in Istanbul today. It's the serpent column. Can you see it? 3 serpents are intertwined. When the monument was intact, you could see the 3 beautiful serpent heads. By the way, the monument came from Delphi in Greece. Now look how things are, right? One head was taken to the British Museum, a British museum. The other is here at the Istanbul Museum. And the other was lost. Here, where the Hippodrome used to end, there's this structure that was much bigger in the past, which is being excavated. Even now in a new archaeological excavation that, well, for those who live here, they say that the saying, all roads lead to Rome, actually referred to New Rome, which was here. And all the roads led to this point here. From this point, all distances were measured from here to the rest of the world. So for them, all roads lead to New Rome, to Constantinople. This was where the whole complex with the palaces of the Byzantine emperors was located. And because of that, it was exactly in this place that Constantinos, the emperor who finally accepted Christianity, decided to build here the first church of his new Rome. And this magnificent building is the greatest example of that. The Hagia Sophia Basilica was the largest church in the world when it was inaugurated in the 6th century to serve as the cathedral of the Orthodox Church of Constantinople. For almost 1,000 years, this was a great temple of Christianity until the city was taken by the Ottomans. From then on, for almost 500 years, it continued to be a place of prayer, but it became a mosque. Today it's just an ordinary square, but this area where I am right now back there was known as the Roman Forum, today called the Forum of Constantinos. Imagine this place crowded with people from around the world passing through Constantinople to trade and many choosing to stay. It was kind of like if we were in the center, right here, you know, in the center of New York, London, or Dubai, Paris. Imagine a big city, if you want, Sao Paulo, the big city of that time, life happening intensely right here, not much is left. The only memory we have that's really clear is this monument right here behind me, which is the Column of Constantinos. On top of it, there used to be a statue of Emperor Constantinos. And there's a tradition that says when Saint Helena came back from Jerusalem, she brought a piece of Jesus' cross with her. And this part, or at least a piece of it, was supposedly buried down here to protect the emperor. There is still a theory, a hypothesis, that this cross, or at least a large part of it, is buried down here beneath this monument dedicated to Constantine. It would make perfect sense to think that when inaugurating his new capital in what was once Byzantium, Constantine would want to be blessed. Above all, his mother would want to bless her son's wild idea of moving the Roman Empire's capital and placing the Holy Cross under the monument dedicated to her son Constantine the Emperor made perfect sense. Remember when I mentioned Emperor Theodosius, the one who brought that marvelous obelisk from Egypt to decorate the Hippodrome? Well, Theodosius has a very important role in the history of Constantinople. When Theodosius died in 395 AD, the Roman Empire was once again split in two. This administrative division was intended to improve efficiency in imperial administration, but it ended up leading to an imbalance between the more troubled European side and the more prosperous Asian side. And because of that, the Western side succumbed to barbarian invasions, and the Roman Empire ceased to exist in the year 476 after Christ. And what happened after that? The Middle Ages. It was in this context, with the eastern side of the empire still very prosperous, that the Orthodox Patriarchate became stronger here. Do you remember when Emperor Constantinos decided to move the Roman Empire's capital here? That had an immediate effect on the power of the Orthodox Church in relation to the Catholic Church of Rome. In 381, during the Second Ecumenical Council, the Bishop of Constantinople was recognized as the second most important in the church hierarchy, right after the Bishop of Rome. That decision reflected the political and religious weight of the new Rome in the Christian world. 70 years later, at the Council of Chalcedon, the Patriarch of Constantinople became responsible for bishops in barbarian lands and led important metropolises, in practice sharing power with the Vatican.
In the Cathedral of St. George, seat of the Orthodox Patriarchate, stands the chair of the Patriarch of the Church of the East.
Today, Patriarch Bartholomeus leads about 160 million Orthodox Christians around the world. Here they follow the Byzantine Rite, which uses Greek as its main language. And he cannot be compared to a pope because the Patriarch of Constantinople does not exercise centralized authority. He is considered primus inter pares, the first among equals, with a more spiritual than administrative role over the other Orthodox churches. It's interesting for us to think that the Orthodox Church, the Catholic Church, and many others were once the same. They were all the Catholic Church because in Greek it meant katholos, which meant universal. They intended it as one church with the same orthodoxy, meaning the same truth. And this division started precisely when Constantinos moved the capital of the empire here, because the Church of Constantinople,
the patriarchy here became very strong, and there started to be a competition with the Vatican.
In the 11th century, the Great Schism divided Christianity into two churches, the Catholic in the West and the Orthodox in the East.
in a way it reproduced a division that, in the politics of the Roman Empire, had happened 6 centuries earlier. And the central conflict was the authority of the Pope. Rome defended papal supremacy, while Constantinople maintained that its patriarch was first among equals. On July 16th, 1,054 envoys from the Pope excommunicated Patriarch Michael Kerularios, leaving the bull of excommunication on the altar here at Hagia Sophia. The Patriarch excommunicated Rome's envoys. And so Christianity was officially divided for the first time. The situation grew so tense that Constantinople suffered an unexpected attack. Have you ever heard of the Fourth Crusade? Yeah, it was a disaster. In 1204, the Crusaders were on their way to Jerusalem to take back the city that the Muslims had conquered almost 500 years earlier. But Pope Innocent III changed plans and decided to send the Crusaders to attack Constantinople. They stole everything, looted the cathedral, took treasures, and came all the way here to me. Everything they found in their way, they killed people. And they even set fire to a large part of the city of Constantinople. That was the Fourth Crusade. What a tragedy. After that, the city was never the same again. A lot remained. We have beauties, like this Orthodox cathedral of the Eastern Church. Everything we've seen, every Islamic building, but that old Constantinople no longer exists.
The ones who took advantage of Constantinople's weakness were the Ottomans.
They had already been conquering large territories, vast lands throughout the Middle East and North Africa. And when they realized that the Byzantine Empire was struggling, they decided to try their luck here as well. In the mid-15th century, Sultan Muhammad the Fine launched a full-scale attack. He deployed hundreds of ships, thousands of soldiers, and brought here, to the gates of Constantinople as well, a weapon that the Ottomans themselves had invented. A very powerful weapon, a cannon that fired bombs weighing more than 500 kilos. And then there was no wall that could withstand it. The violent attack only ended on a Tuesday. More precisely on May 29th, 1493. And that day was forever marked as the fall of Constantinople. And that fall changed the world. With the end of the Eastern Roman Empire, the extremely rich trade route between Asia and Europe fell into the hands of the Muslims.
Maritime discoveries were also taking place, driven by Portugal and Spain, and the loss of power in the West.
It was the end of the Middle Ages. And now that Constantinople had become an Islamic city, what would happen to the countless churches that had been built since Constantine allowed religious worship and Christianity flourished here? Well, the reality is that almost all of them were turned into mosques, like this marvel here, Hagia Sophia, the Holy Wisdom, which later also became a museum in the 20th century and now recently has become a mosque again. But how, after all, did Constantinople become Istanbul and come to be part of Turkey? In the First World War, the Ottoman Turks sided with Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire and lost, and that was catastrophic for them. The Republic of Turkey, as we know it today, this beautiful and important country, it was born shortly after the First World War, in 1923. The founder was Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, a face we still see practically everywhere today. Atatürk is still the great hero of Turkey. And his idea back then, exactly 100 years ago, was to create a secular state here. In other words, a state where religion would not interfere in political affairs. Istanbul ended up losing its status as the capital to Ankara, but it remains this wonderful city that attracts millions and millions of people every year. Now, do you know who really reigns around here today? It's not Constantine, it's not any sultan, no, it's the cats. There are more than 300,000 cats in the city living freely, and everyone gives them affection and food. They are vaccinated. They are truly residents of Istanbul, raised, spoiled, and fed by those who live in and pass through this magnificent city.